Uh, just Lake, and a very good morning to all. So, welcome to the one day conference on neuroscience, Buddhist psychology, and cognitive science. Before I proceed, I would like to request everyone to kindly put your mobile phone on silence mode to avoid the interruptions. Thank you. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Tenzin Legman from Program Division, and I'll be moderating today's first inaugural session. On behalf of Tibet House, Cultural Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I would like to extend our warm welcome to our respected Chief Guest, Dr. Ajay Swaroop Mathurji, Chairman of Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi, our keynote speaker from Buddhist perspective, Professor Mahesh Deokar, Head of the Department of Pali, Savitribai Phule, Pune University, Nagpur, our keynote speaker from Neuroscience perspective, Dr. Ravindra Nagendraji, Associate Professor from National Institutes of Mental Health and Neuroscience, Bangalore, and Geshe Damdul, Director of Tibet House, New Delhi, to kindly come on stage and start the gathering by lighting the light of wisdom. Thank you. I request all the speakers to kindly take their respective seats on their dais. I request all to kindly take your respective seats. Thank you. I now request Geshe Damdul, Director of Tibet House, New Delhi, to kindly present the souvenirs to our respected chief guests and keynote speakers. Dr. Ajay Swaroop Mathur, Chairman of Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi. A keynote speaker from Buddhist perspective, Professor Mahesh Deokar, head of the Department of Pali, Savitribai Pune University, Nagpur. Thank you. And our keynote speaker from neuroscience background, Dr. Ravindra Nagendraji, Associate Professor from National Institutes of Mental Health and Neuroscience, Bangalore. Thank you, Kishila. To begin with, I would like to give a brief introduction about Tibet House. Tibet House Cultural Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi, was established in 1965 by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet for the purpose of preserving the cultural heritage of Tibet at the time when it faced the extinction in its homeland, as well as for providing a center for Tibetan culture and Buddhist studies. His Holiness' recurring emphasis on developing a sense of universal harmony and compassion as its own effective antidote to global suffering, together with the needs for a meaningful exchange between different religious and cultural heritage, also had a profound effect on the purpose and its activities of Tibet House. Over a period of 5 decades since its inception, Tibet House has come to recognize as a significant institution for the dissemination of Tibetan culture and for Buddhist studies. Tibet House also has a museum of valuable Tibetan arts and artifacts, as well as a library. Every year, a publication unit from Tibet House publishes around 10 to 15 books a year in program division, which regularly organizes lectures, seminars, conferences, film screenings, and exhibitions. Tibet House also offers four different courses on Buddhist philosophy, psychology, and Tibetan language course. As you can see on the screen, we have four different courses. The first one is NMC, Nalinda Master Course, which is a 5-year course. And the second one is NDC, Nalinda Diploma Course, which is a 14-month course. And NCC, Nalinda Certificate Course, which is a 2-month course. And last, we have a TLC, Tibetan Language Course, which is a 4-month course. Firstly, the first batch of Nalinda Master's Course, which was launched on December 2016 on the occasion of 51st anniversary of Tibet House, in the gracious presence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, along with Shri Kiran Rijuji, the former Union State Minister of Home Affairs, and Shri Najib Jung, Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. The first batch of Nalinda Master's Course, Batch 1, is completed with 372 students and 44 different countries, and from 44 different countries. And second batch of Nalinda Master Course, which has already started in July, in which around 900 participants were enrolled from 54 different countries. And secondly, the Nalinda Diploma Course, which was launched on 2018. Till now, we have successfully completed with 3 batches of NDC, and the 4th batch of the Nalinda Diploma Course is being offered, and the registration is already open now. And very recently, we have a 2-month Nalinda Certificate Course, which is being offered to students who wish to acquire knowledge of various Buddhist subjects in order to lay a good foundation of Nalinda Buddhist philosophy. Until now, we have successfully completed the first batch of Nalinda Certificate Course so far. And for the Tibetan language course, which is both online and offline now, till date, 23 batches has been successfully completed and 24th batch has already started in December. Thank you. Now I would like to request Geshe Dorji Damdul, Director of Tibet House, New Delhi, to kindly address the gathering and to briefly introduce Geshe-la. Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul is currently the Director of Tibet House, New Delhi, the cultural center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, while being assigned with the responsibility of the directorship of Tibet House. He also gives regular lectures and leads philosophy classes in Tibet House and other places as well. He travels widely within India and abroad to teach Buddhist philosophy, psychology, logic, and practice. He has also worked on various books as assigned by the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He visited US in 2008 to work with Professor Paul Ekman on His Holiness the Dalai Lama's book, Ethics for a New Millennium, Part 2, and the book series, Art of Happiness, which were jointly written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, such as The Graded Path. He has written a number of papers for national and international conferences on topics such as the paradox of the brain and mind and ultimate reality, according to Arya Nagarjuna. He is currently in the process of writing two important books, one entitled Journey into the Paradox of Brain and Mind, and the other, What Constitutes the Ultimate Reality, the Facts of Understanding the Ultimate Reality. Thank you, Venerable Geshe-la.
Thank you, Mr. Lemala. Thank you so much for your kind introduction. Respected Dr. Ajay, Swaroop, Chief Guest, and our two keynote speakers, Professor Mahesh Deokar and Professor Ravindra Naginerji, and all the respected esteemed speakers, chairpersons, and all the participants. In fact, I've seen the journey of the last 13 years of being here in Delhi, in Tibet House, and even the audience. I can see a great transition. Audience, what I see today, was almost like from this, like 90% of who you are, who are here, were not there, and those 90% who existed like 13 years ago, no more with us now. It doesn't mean that they left the world, but they must have left for some other missions of their own life. And some of those who were doing PhD, who were masters, now becoming a doctorate and serving the various institutions is a great inspiration. Okay. Without much ado, as explained by our program coordinator, assistant program coordinator, Ms. Lemala, what Tibet House has been doing, and so here the topic, neuroscience, Buddhist psychology, and the quantitative science. This is a huge topic, and we're very fortunate that we have chief guest here, who's going to shed light for us about, say, what's going on the reality, the clinical, the side, the Ganga huge hospital setup, and also two keynote speakers who are so well versed in their own disciplines. Professor Mathur, extremely brilliant and extremely knowledgeable and so compassionate and very competent in leading this department for the last many years. And I'm very fortunate to be oftentimes part of this program there. And we have Dr. Ravindra Naginerji from NIMHANS, National Institute for health, medical health, mental health, and research. And we've been associated for the last many years. Again, a very dynamic, very competent professor. So given that I can see many of you were youngsters, perhaps the graduate from colleges, universities, did your PhD and so forth. I'm here just to explain to you a little bit about say, the uniqueness of this conference. So I remember when I was in school, there was like 1988, I graduated from class 12 and in science stream, and I was so fond of physics. And say 1985, 86, 85, and 84, in the English, on the subject, there is this telegraph writing, and most likely the younger ones don't know what is telegraph writing, and elders my age, elders, they know that telegraph writing. So today, you don't find this subject there. You don't find this topic in the school textbooks anymore. You know why the reason is? It's for the simple reason that it is redundant now. It's obsolete. It is of no use today with the emails. So fast. What's up? So fast. What is that? Telegram. And then the signal. So now the sending messages so fast. Telegram, totally obsolete. So the point is that we need to remember, particularly the younger ones, remember that what with the conferences that we organize, the subjects you study must have some relevance to humanity. So where there's no relevance, where it becomes obsolete, it's just to be discarded. So what we do today should not be treated as a ritual. There must be some purpose there. What is the purpose? Today, in the age of the internet, in the age of the explosion of the social media, so there we see that there's an exponential rise in mental health issue. This is what's happening, particularly amongst the youngsters. And the next 10, 20 years, it'll reach the middle age, because these youngsters will become middle age. And after 30, 40 years, the whole humanity will suffer from isolation. Every individual have to live in isolation. They don't know how to live in community. So this conference plays such an important role in that regard. So we have neuroscience. How do you explain the mechanism of the mental health from the point of view of neuroscience? How to explain it from the cognitive science point of view? Cognitively, how to explain this emotional, say the downturn, how we can fix those emotional downturn cognitively. And Buddhist psychology is extremely rich, and particularly I bring forth the element of what today known as the positive psychology. And we also have the Tibetan medical tradition here. Doctor here will speak on, say, in line with the Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist psychology, will explain to us how, say, from the traditional medicine point of view, which shares a lot with the Ayurveda tradition and others, how the emotions are related to your physiology, and then the physiology related to your biology. So we see that this is really a very rich program. Usually Tibet House early we used to have like a 2-day program, 2-day programs or 3-day programs. So because of the COVID the last 2 years, because of online, people find it very difficult to spend so much time for like 2 or 3 days. So we made it 1 day during the COVID days. And then today is a remnant of what we did the last 2 years. It's just 1 day. Otherwise, because this is a heavy, it involves so many facets of the human psychology and the the neural correlates of the human psychology and how you explain this cognitively and how you explain this cognitively. So with all these things, we see that there should be, as I said earlier, there should be great relevance to the humanity, relevance to the today's youngsters, to heal them, in other words, to heal the emotional crisis. So in this connection, what I'd like to see is that they share with you is that where are we going wrong? But His Holiness the Dalai Lama during his public addresses, be it here in India or elsewhere in the world, experts they always come up with one question. Modern education, while it is meant for human flourishing, but on the contrary, while this has reached to such height of development, the human beings, the human emotions, they're just going downturn. So where are we going wrong? And His Holiness, without any doubt, without even second thought, would say that this is all because of the limitation, shortcomings for modern education. The modern education, which is a derivative, which is a legacy of the Industrial Revolution, where there was a tremendous emphasis on the material progress. But the material progress means your heart does not really count. It's your brain which counts for the material progress. But today, the crisis that we are facing is not only because it's not because of the lack of material resources, but this emotional crisis. So for which the modern education, where we spend, each one of us, we spend minimum like 10, 15 years. And those doing PhD will spend like 17, 18, 19 years. And we see that we spend we invest so much of time on this, resources on this. But just speak very honestly, what is that thing for which we invest so much time, energy, resources, so forth? It's modern education. What is it like? It's just to bring a development in your brain. For example, the proof is very simple. You go to any modern education school, modern education, if a child says 2 plus 3 equals 5-ish, even if the child has the capacity to become the second Mahatma Gandhi or the second His Holiness of Dalai, but nobody will count him as a brilliant student. Whereas the student says 2 plus 3 equals 5, and yet having the capacity to destroy the whole world. Everybody will say that yes. So this is a modern education. This is a legacy left by Industrial Revolution. So now His Holiness very clearly warns the world that we need something to supplement to this modern education, which otherwise emphasizes so much on the brain development, which is totally lacking the attention which is required to be paid to the development of the heart. So in relation to this, His Holiness, as early as like 20 years ago, you can see this poster here, the backdrop here. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Professor Francis Varela. He's a world-renowned neuroscientist, and two of them, along with Adam Engel, started what is known today came to be known as the Mindlife Institute. Earlier, it began as a Mindlife Conference. So where the minds, the giants of the West and the East, they come together to speak on how to develop the heart, how to develop the brain, and how to explain these mechanisms based on neuroscience or cognitively, effectively, and neuroscience and through the pure psychological perspective. So we see that today's conference is to look at things, how to explain the attention, focus, which is totally lacking today, and which was so much emphasized many years, 30, 40 years ago in every schools, universities, colleges, and today it's what's lacking. And how to look at it and how to fix that problem, neurologically, psychologically, and cognitively. So this is something very important. And in this connection, His Holiness already came up with a vision and now a mission being undertaken to be under the big and broad umbrella of what is known as universal ethics. Universal ethics, whatever religion that you're following, it doesn't matter. Whatever tradition that you're following, it doesn't matter. Everyone needs to enact what universal ethics. But that ethics based on what is beyond ethics to be acceptable, to be applied, to be easily applicable, acceptable to everyone across the board of humanity. So today we see that learning, social, emotional, ethical learning, under the auspices, the main guidance of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and undertaken by Emory University. So this is what is currently what is being applied in many universities, colleges, institutions, and so forth. And hopefully, the various governments on the government level, on the national level, on the international level, and eventually UNO level, I hope that this will be enacted, that the world will be very different. Today, Ukraine war, how so many people, innocent people, they die. They're suffering. Today in Delhi, it's 6 degrees centigrade, the midnight. In Ukraine, just imagine what's the temperature minus. And people, they don't have a shelter to live in. Who created this? Just one person. When the thought process, when cognitively the thought process goes wrong, effectively the thought process goes wrong, then this is the disaster one person can create to the world. Not only Ukrainians, even thousands of Russians are suffering. I know some of my friends who otherwise can contribute a lot to the humanity in terms of neuroscience and so forth. So now they get stuck because of the censorship from the various countries on Russia, because of which they cannot undertake the research anymore because they're not getting the funds. So there's thousands and thousands of people are suffering in Russia, in Ukraine. And then all the border tensions everywhere in the world is all because of the problem when the thinking goes wrong. Thinking goes wrong, which are affected by emotions. When that goes wrong, the whole world suffers. So therefore, this program, this conference is expected to say educate the people and eventually to see how our it's not just a very abstract phenomenon happening there, like totally material. No, something which is immaterial inside. Neuroscience point of view, say the synaptic connections, neurofiring is happening. And cognitively speaking, how your mind cognitively, when it distorted, then where the emotionally, the affectively, you can go wrong. Where cognitively you can see things properly, then effectively you can become very wholesome and very meaningful. So this is whole purpose. So with this mind to educate ourselves and then see how these different disciplines they can come together as like the brothers sisters of the world, of one family world, and for the flourishing of the humanity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gisela. May I now request Dr. Ajay Swaroop, our chief guest for the event, to kindly address the gathering and to introduce Dr. Ajay Swaroop. Dr. Ajay ji is a senior consultant, Department of ENT and Chairman, Board of Management, Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi. He has been a consultant in this hospital for the last 38 years. His work profile includes budgetary planning, expenditure, purchase, administrative, and all issues related to the work of the hospital and expansion projects to propagate the working model of Sir Gangaram Hospital in various parts of the cities and country. His passion is to take this organization to further heights, both in patient care as well as academic and fundamental research projects. Finally, to make Sir Gangaram Hospital a tertiary care center with most modern and sophisticated technology, keeping the ethos of patient care and charity. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I represent Sir Gangaram Hospital, which is a 675 bedded tertiary care hospital in Delhi. We are providing cutting edge technology, looking after the health of all segments of the society. In fact, charity and ethical care is our trademark, and we strive to live up to the ideals of Sir Gangaram ji, our founder, who was a great philanthropist. In fact, he was an engineer by profession, and even today, most of the grand, magnificent buildings in Lahore have been built by him. He is held in very high respect in Pakistan, even today, and a hospital by the same name still exists in Pakistan, while this hospital was set up in 1954 after the partition, and by God's grace, it has done tremendously well, and I hope to continue the tradition and lead it further. Well, that was just a small introduction of the hospital. Frankly, I was a little bit overwhelmed by this invite to be the chief guest of this conference. Being a purely clinical person, we tend to concentrate on straightforward clinical symptoms, diagnosis, and treatment. So the topic of the conference was a little overwhelming for me. However, there is a global need to promote well being. Globally, it is estimated that 5% of adults suffer from depression. Now, this is a very large figure and a very scary figure. So, given the multiple challenges for mental health care worldwide, there is a pressing need to broaden our understanding of mental health and find additional ways of promoting well being and decrease suffering. Well, Buddhist psychology refers to central aspects of a manifold philosophical and psychological and spiritual tradition of thought and practice, which was originally developed and systemized in the last 400 years before the Common Era. The five pillars of psychology are biological approach, a psychodynamic approach, a behavioral approach, a cognitive approach, and finally a humanistic approach. Now, in this conference, as I see, there are various experts who are going to speak on the various aspects of behavioral sciences, and I'm sure after this deliberations and debate, this will contribute to our understanding, further understanding, and mitigation of human stress and its suffering. I wish the conference all the success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ajay. May I now request our keynote speaker from Neuroscience perspective, Dr. Ravindra Nagendraji, kindly address the gathering and to briefly introduce Dr. Ravindra Nagendra. Dr. Nagendra is an associate professor at Center for Consciousness Studies, Human Sleep and Cognition Research Laboratory, Department of Neurophysiology, National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience, NIMHANS, Bangalore, Karnataka. A, neurophy- a neurophysiologist by specialized training in sleep and cognition, his interest comprises in basic science and clinical aspects of human sleep. He has a passionate interest in integrating intense psychological aspects pertaining to yoga meditation with neuroscience, with special focus in understanding neuroscientific aspects of meditation and its effect on sleep and cognition. He's a faculty in National Sleep Medicine course, an Indo-US initiative to train general physicians and specialists in sleep medicine. Dr. Nagendra has many peer-reviewed publications in national and international journals of repute and book chapters. His work recognized with a national award from Association of Physiologists and Pharmacologists of India and the Fellow of Mind and Life Institute, USA. He has traveled extensively to conduct seminar, workshop on sleep and presented research articles at various national and international conferences, visiting faculty and member of board studies ethics committee at various universities and medical institutes. He conducts workshop seminars on relevant topics related to personality development by integrating neuroscience, Indian psychology, with special reference to Swami Vivekananda. Thank you.
Morning. Namaste. The outset, I thank Geshe ji and the Tibet House, the whole team, to giving this particular opportunity. And to speak over as a keynote was a big surprise for me because just yesterday I got a call that I have to speak for 10 minutes in the inaugural session. Then I was a bit hesitant. I told why there are so many senior people, then opportunity can be given to them, but then they emphasize no from the neuroscience perspective. So you're supposed to share thoughts, say for 5 to 10 minutes on this. We know that the paradigm of understanding the mind, its different attributes like cognition, emotion, both trying to understand what cognition and emotion is and the application of that, both for the normal well-being and also for the mental health perspective, has been changing a big paradigm shift, say from last say 10 to 15 years by now. So probably say around 15 years back or 20 years back, if any say neuroscience people or a psychiatrist or a neurologist or anybody or any for that any matter, any biomedical person who wants to sit on the same floor or under the same roof where the philosophy people are there, the meditation practitioners are there and different disciplines are there, it would have been very difficult even to think of it. But now we are seeing a lot of paradigm shift is happening. So this shows that okay, now the watertight compartment that we ourselves that we have created in our academia, right? Okay, this is psychology department, this is neuroscience department, this is philosophy department, this is social science department, this is physics, and so we had that watertight, that compartment has really been reducing, and this is a very good sign as far as the development of knowledge is concerned. Because one important thing about any philosophy is to welcome the best that is available in the different knowledge system, and our the lead compartment which we ourselves have created has very much thinned down, even though it is there, but still it has come down a lot, and a lot of exchange of ideas are happening. But whenever there is an exchange of ideas that are happening, it is quite natural, um, to surface some of the differences in basic conceptual understanding of certain things. The same thing now also holds good when the philosophy from the traditional perspective and the neuroscience perspective they stand, because of the base certain conceptual understanding, basic core conceptual understanding itself, it can be difficult. Why it is difficult? Maybe the training that two schools have been trained for decades together, or it can be that from the neuroscience perspective, what we think the brain it works, at least at this point of time, okay, that may not be incompatible with what actually the the philosophy or the psychology it is propagating. Or it could be that philosophy or the psychology people, what they conceptualized certain ideas, so they may not be in a position to understand that how actually brain, it works, or brain or mind, how they are related. But however, one good thing is that, okay, at least the people have started shaking hands together, sitting and discussing, and at least to agree for the disagreements between each other. That is a very good sign. So to see that, okay, this say uh, new field, okay, which is totally that is emerging, that is it is moving forward. So even though this particular field has taken a very long journey in the western part of the world, but in our country, even though we have a very rich tradition of philosophy and psychology, but still the dialogues that happens in the western world when with these two, you know disciplines, where one discipline is totally has an inward journey and other discipline is totally into an external journey, where we should have a common, the overlapping area where everybody can sit and discuss. But it is not happening the way we are supposed to expect it that to happen in our country, because this is the land of philosophy and the psychology, right? That has given immense amount of work that has been done from thousands and thousands of years. But still, however, I feel, at least in today's in certain field of in academia, right, especially when it comes to the humanities side, they're very, very reserved. I may be wrong, but it may be my perception, but it's there. So that even they have to come forward and also to see that, okay, this dialogue can happen. Now, what is the advantage of having these cross-disciplinary dialogue? Advantage of having this cross-disciplinary dialogue is, one is try to understand what actually these practices that has been propagated in terms of meditation, various schools of meditation, how it is going to bring about a changes in the person, in his cognition, emotion, and this development of his skills, where he can cope up with his own, say, day-to-day issues. And what is the application of that in the, say, the mental health, or it can be in the health in general. In this exercise, one thing that neuroscience has taken the advantage is, we have probably understood how actually a brain works, because this conceptual understanding of the philosophical aspect of psychology, when this module has been investigated from the gadgets of the neuroscience, right, no doubt, okay, we can validate or not validate these techniques, but one thing is for very sure, we are trying to understand how actually brain works. Whether we can really validate or not validate, that's a different issue. So there are two aspects. One is to validate or not to validate. The another is try really to understand how actually the brain actually it is working. Because even even at this point of time, probably I feel that neuroscience is not gone to depth to understand how actually the brain works. What is the difference between the brain and mind? Is the mind synonymous with that of a brain? Of course, neuroscience has to work in that particular, the framework itself. So this is how where and trying to understand these modules with the neuroscience perspective will we'll come to know, right? We'll come to know that, okay, how uh, the neuroscience led information can actually try to understand the philosophy and the psychology, okay, in much more better and much more in a practical way, and more practical way, and to contextualize to the present day needs and present day situation. So that is the advantage of having these cross sectional dialogues, where it is mutually beneficial for both the fields, but however it is much more beneficial for the humanities as such, because the goal of both the fields is to bring about the well-being. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ravindraji. I now request Professor Mahesh Ashok Deokar, our keynote speaker from the Buddhist perspective, to kindly address the gathering and to briefly introduce Professor Mahesh Deokar. Professor Mahesh Deokar is a professor and head of Department of Pali, Savitribai, Pune University. His fields of specialization includes comparative grammars of Pali and Sanskrit, Theravada Buddhism, contemplative Buddhism, translation and editing. He has published many works like Technical Terms and Techniques of the Pali and the Sanskrit grammars from Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath Varanasi, 2008, and Vartamala Sutti, edited by late Michael Han, Shrikant S. Bahulkar, Lata Mahesh Deokar, Mahesh Ashok Deokar, Deshana and Institute of Buddhist and Allied Studies, Pune, and Aditya Prakashan, New Delhi, 2016.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. It has been a great honor to be a part of this conference, and I'm especially thankful to Geshe for this kind invitation. I am happy that today I'm sharing the dais with Ajay Swaroop ji, whom we heard a lot during the COVID times, I think, on the radio as well. And also with Ravindra Nagendraji, who has just now given a very thoughtful keynote. This love affair between Buddhism and psychology began a few decades ago. And then now, with the mediators like His Holiness and Geshe, it is now entering into a marriage. I hope a happy marriage, producing wonderful children. Actually, uh, when these two disciplines they started moving closer to each other, of course, understanding mind and mind plays an important role in Buddhism, and this is how we saw that there are some kind of correlates between the two disciplines. And especially initially, as we know, it started with this with the goal of uh, how to bring it in a, like the mindfulness was the first, I think, the first key aspect in Buddhism that had attracted the psychologists, clinical psychologists, and then came meditation with this neuroscience, and seeing the effects of meditation from a from neurological perspective. But I think there's still a lot to be done, and lots of ground to be covered. Um, Especially now, when we talk about brain and mind, and in Buddhism too, I mean, often this question was asked: where is mind? I mean, where is it located, and so on and so forth. If you look at the way Buddhism formulates its ideas about mind, it is talking about mind in terms of processes and not so much in terms of its carriers, right? So, I mean, the very definition of chitta, uh, from the Pali Abhidhamma point of view, for example, we just say is chintanam chittam. So it's just a process of cognizing, a process of it's a cognitive process that we're talking about. But then, in addition to that, we also look at, from Buddhist perspective, we also look at mind as something. It's not just a present process of cognizing, but it is also a product, of our past habits, past karma, as we call it. So it is something like which is chittam, accumulated over a period of time to our habits and mental patterns and so on and so forth. And the third aspect is its dynamic creative aspect, where you say that it has an ability to create the world, right? So we say mind creates everything. So mind is a creator. So, from the Buddhist philosophical point of view, we are looking at mind from this three different perspectives, and I think probably what we still have to explore from a psychological or cognitive science point of view is this kind of uh, aspect of which is where we talk about accumulated mind, right? Of course, in different Buddhist philosophical schools, like we talk about Alaya and Alaya Vijnana and so forth. So where we kind of very strongly talk about this very aspect of mind, which I think uh, need to be examined further, also from a scientific point of view. I don't know how that can be done. Probably people like Ravindraji can better, devise some things where we can also focus on this aspect. Another point which I would like to bring to your notice is this particular divide between uh, physical and mental. I mean, of course, in Buddhism we do talk about mind, mental factors, and then the physical factor or material aspects, right? So we talk about chitta, cetasika, and rupa, for example. But if you look at even the material aspect of this whole process, and here we may just keep in mind that when Buddhism talk about even materiality, this materiality is not bereft of our cognitive world, our world of our mental experience, right? So the Buddha only talked about those material aspects which are connected with our experiences, yeah, with our experiential world, and not each and every material aspect, like as a scholar of physics. So here it is interesting to note that even though we talk about like mind is of course in the mental aspect, but when you look at the rupa aspects in the Abhidhamma, for example, we are also talking about what we call as a pasada rupa in Pali. That is a sensitivity of your organs. I mean, this sensory um, ability, and that is put in the category of rupa. Now, one may ask this question. I mean, if you have a physical element which is sensitive to certain objects, right? Now, whether that to be put in the cognitive, I mean, in the mental realm or in the physical realm. Buddhist philosophy, of course, has put it in the physical realm and not in the mental realm. And so probably what I see is what I can think of is like they are making some difference between sensing and cognizing. Yeah. So this pasada rupa, or this particular sensitivity of our organs, like in your eye or ear or nose and tongue, and your tactile abilities, these are just the sensory abilities, and the cognition process, according to Buddhism, starts when these senses are then taken into consideration by your mind. And so this is how I mean there's this subtle difference which the tradition makes. And in this case of, I mean, the mental processes too, I mean, we can see that Buddhism is talking about, for example, in terms of uh, a cognitive process. Then we have a process which is kind of at the level of responding, like a javana, as we call it in the Abhidharmic language. And then we also have a process which is just an existential cognition
cognitive process, which is known as bhavanga in the Theravada Abhidhammic tradition, and it is also known as in Alaya Vijnana, for example, in the Yogacara school. Now, so these are the different aspects of consciousness which the Buddhist philosophy talks about. Now, I do not know how and where that can fit into this the dialogue between neuroscience and cognitive sciences. Probably this is another area where we need to kind of look into in much of the details. And the third and last point, which I would like to make here, is that uh, see, I mean, this question, like, what can Buddhism contribute, or what can science contribute to Buddhism? Just now, Ravindraji has very nicely said, I mean, humanities has to kind of, be more bold and open to receive this inputs also from science, and we need to have that kind of openness, as His Holiness has already said, that if I find something which is not scientific in Buddhism, I'm ready to give it up. Right? I think that kind of open attitude is really necessary. So what I feel about this is like what Buddhism is trying to do. I mean, if you look at Buddhist Abhidhammic even sciences, they were not really aware of brain, and I mean, they were aware of the organ called brain, but if, for example, we find it in the late Abhidhamma in the Theravada tradition, but they were not really aware of its functions. They were not aware of basically these neurons and their functions and so on. So they were basically, as I said, we were mainly talking about the mental processes and not their carriers or where it happens. When the Abhidhammic, the Theravada Abhidhamma, they were pressed for it, like what is the physical base of mental processes, and then they said, okay, it's a heart, so they call it Hadayavattu, for example. So they say heart is a base, but I mean, I don't think it was a very well kind of studied or scientifically kind of a research topic at that time. Maybe one has to really also go deeper and find out this relationship between the mental processes and their carriers. But I mean, on the top of that, I think what Buddhism is trying to do is it is providing us a view with which one can look at the way we are understanding our mind, or even how we are approaching psychology. I mean, in psychology right now, we are concerned mainly with the mental disorders and how to kind of uh, establish the well-being of a person from the mental health point of view. At the most now we are also talking about like positive psychology, where we are also talking about developmental psychology, and so things are kind of widening a bit. But in Buddhism, of course, we are also talking about like higher consciousness, and for that Buddhism provides a kind of a view with which one can look at the reality. So because according to Buddhism, all these problems, they start with the wrong cognition. And when we say cognition, it's not just seeing the world as it appears to us, but to go beyond and to kind of go into the depths of it and to find what actually constitutes the reality. So these Buddhist ideas of non-self, or the emptiness, and the three signs, impermanence, suffering, and empty, and non-self. I mean, these are important viewpoints. Through these lenses, one has to kind of also approach how we cognize the world. So if cognitive science also kind of takes into consideration this aspect, I think that it may help us to grow together. And this will also kind of, the inputs from science can also enrich our understanding of Buddhism in a greater extent. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm sure that I'm looking forward to this conference, and I hope to learn more things from all of you who are going to present in the next sessions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mahesh Deokar. Now, before I conclude today's inaugural session, on behalf of Tibet House, New Delhi, I would like to thank our chief guest for the event, Dr. Swaroop Dr. Ajay Swaroop, our keynote speakers, Professor Mahesh Deokar and Dr. Nagendra, and Venerable Geshe for gracing this occasion. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you. We're now going to start with the first session in 5 minutes, so please be seated. The theme for the first session is cognition, mindfulness, and analytical meditation, and my colleague Kungwa Chandinla will be moderating this session. Thank you.